Hi, Chuck McCown here. So this is the second part of the video, how I got into building saw attachments, okay? So if you heard my first video, you learned about how I got into measuring the health of a vacuum excavator and flows and flow meters and all that stuff. Well, so I published a white paper on it. I think I did a YouTube video on it. Anyhow, one of our saw blade customers, Chalice, called me up and says, "Hey, Chuck, could you come up here like you recommend? I mean, we got a guzzler truck on this thing, but it's just slower than molasses. Can you kind of bring your flow meter up and see if that guzzler truck really is flowing what they say it does?" So I drove up wherever he was. I don't remember. He was in northern Utah or southern Idaho, and we put it on that guzzler truck, and without even cutting or anything, it was just hooked up to the saw. Oh, let me back up. Another guy asked me, "Hey Chuck, could you please use your flow meter to check and whether the length of the hose to the vac makes a bit of a difference?" And I was sure, you put a longer hose on, you're gonna have less flow. Didn't make a bit of difference. We went like from 25 to 50 feet of hose on an HX75, and it was almost unmeasurable. The flow just didn't change hardly at all. So anyhow, that doesn't have anything to do with the other story. But so I'm up there. He has his Vermeer tractor with a Vermeer MTR16 saw on it, hooked up to a big ass guzzler truck. I put this flow meter in line. No, I actually think I had to do this in 2 stages because he needed more flow. So I built the bigger one. There's a bigger brother of this. And so I put it in and had him start. And that guzzler truck, just barely idling, was already flowing like 1,500, 2,000 CFM. And so they idled it up, and it was flowing 2,500 to 3,000 CFM without sawing. Okay, so I said, okay, because the design of this thing allows you to run dirt through the flow meter. It doesn't damage anything, like the pitot tube would have got wiped out if you actually run dirt and rocks through it. So he started cutting and cutting at a slow pace, but still cutting with dirt and rocks in the tube. And it was doing 2,400, 2,500 CFM. So the flow was good. And so he said, so what do you think it is? Well, this is the first time I'd ever laid eyes on a Vermeer MTR16. I went back to look at it, and I says, okay, this thing's like 5-6 inches wide. The saw housing, it's almost twice as wide as the Ditch Witch MT16. And I said, well, I think the first problem is you have this much bigger volume, but the same amount of air. So the air is going to be going slower, right? If you're pumping a fixed amount of air through something and you squeeze it down, if you're going to keep that same volume of air, it's got to speed up a whole bunch. So I said, I think you need to have less width of your saw housing. And I said, also, you're taking your dirt off way too low, because by that time I'd figured out that the dirt comes flying off the sawtooth at different angles depending on how deep you are. And I said, none of that. The dirt, when it leaves this saw, makes a hard left turn into the hose. And so that's choking things down and causing clogs. And he says, well, can you take this saw back to your shop and like cut it up and make it narrower and change the dirt thingy? And I was like, man, I ought to just make you a whole new housing. I'll just make you a narrower housing. I'll make it patterned off the Ditch Witch product. I'll improve where the dirt comes off, better dirt launch angle. I'll give you a 6-inch transition, and let's give that a try. And I don't know if I did a try it before you buy it thing. I might have. That's kind of what I do. I said no risk type of deal. And I said, yeah. So what I did was I made that came up with what's called the Vermeer Speed Conversion Kit. So you just change out the saw housing. You leave the horizontal slidey mounting area alone, which is called the traverse, and all the rest of this stuff. And you reuse the Vermeer hydraulic motor, which is a pretty expensive part of it. And basically, you're just changing out the sheet metal parts that contain the blade. And so we got that all put together. And you can see I've got a YouTube video about how to do this conversion yourself. It only takes a half an hour to switch it over. And he more than doubled his cutting speed. Same flows, same everything else, just a different saw housing with improved airflow through the saw housing. And oh, Jenny just reminded me. And well, yeah, bringing the dirt out at the right angle and not making it do a hard left turn. I mean, we made a lot of improvements to it. Vermeer, after this kind of got out and I started making and selling a few of these, Vermeer engineers called me and said, "Hey man, we've been watching your videos. You want to talk to us about this?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll tell you." Says, "You got to make that saw housing narrower, and you got to do this and this and this and this." And over the years, they've adopted some of it. Okay, I was just down at ConExpo in Las Vegas and looked at their newest one, and it's narrower, and they're taking their dirt off in a better place, but they still aren't in an optimal place. But anyway, I digress. After we had these things out for a while, somebody said, "Well, I don't have a Vermeer. Can you take that Vermeer thing and just mount it on any tractor?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess we're going to have to build the traverse that slides sideways, and we're going to have to build an arm that goes down and hooks to the saw housing. But yeah, we can build the arm and the traverse." And so we studied up a few other designs in the industry and kind of mashed up a design, which I'm evolved into even a better traverse nowadays. But so we started building and selling saw attachments, and we've sold a lot of them. So we still sell a few conversion kits now and then, but by and large, our 16-inch, we call it the Saw 16, got 16 inches deep, is our biggest seller, followed by the Saw 26, which cuts 26 inches deep. But we have a in-betweener called the Saw 21, which cuts 21 inches deep for those stinky city road department guys that gotta have 18 inches of cover. So anyway, we got you covered with saw attachments, but that's a very long story about how we got into the business. Thank you.